Hello dear students, welcome you all for the fifth session of chapter 4 of Business Taxation course 6th semester Mangalore University BCom. So in this session we are going to discuss composition levy under GST. So my presentation for this session will include composition scheme, then person not liable to opt for composition scheme, the condition for opting composition scheme. Let's straight away discuss what is composition scheme. So composition scheme is simple. If your turnover is less than 1.5 crore, then you are given an opportunity or option to opt for this scheme. So that is what mentioned in section 10 of the GST Act. A business whose turnover is less than 1.5 crore, 75 lakhs in case of special category states are allowed to get registered under this scheme. So what happens when you register under this? So what happens is you don't get an opportunity to collect the tax from the receiver, and also you will not be eligible to get the input tax credit benefit. You have to pay invoice. Sorry, not pay. You have to show invoice in the form of bill of supply, not tax invoice. So that is what the feature of composition scheme. The person under this scheme is not allowed to collect the tax from the receiver of supply, and also he is not entitled to get the input tax credit benefit. Then required to file returns only one time at a quarter. In regular scheme you have to file per monthly 3 returns, but here you have to file only 1 return. So this is simplified form for especially for the small traders. So it will be very burdensome or cumbersome for the small traders to file the returns every month, 3 returns. It will be definitely hectic task for them. So to reduce that burden, composition scheme introduced where in quarter only 1 return has to be filed by the trader. So need to show bill of supply instead of tax invoice. So need not show your tax invoice. You can just show your bill of supply. Then what is the rate of tax? So it's 5% for the food and restaurants. At 2.5 CGST, SGST is 2.5. Then 1% for manufacturers agents. CGST is 0.5, SGST 0.5. So this 5% is on total turnover. 1% is in total turnover, not on the particular transaction. Then person not liable to opt for composition scheme. Who are not liable to opt for composition scheme? So there are persons who cannot opt for composition scheme even though turnover is 1.5 crore. Even though your turnover is less than 1.5 crore, you cannot opt. Who are the persons? So first one is casual taxable person and non-resident taxable person. So they will not be able to opt composition scheme because they are trading for temporary period of time, shorter period of time. Then person whose turnover exceeds rupees 1.5 crore. So if your turnover exceeds rupees 1.5 crore, then you are automatically not qualified to register under this scheme. Then person purchased goods from unregistered dealer. If you are purchasing any goods from unregistered dealer, then you will not be having an option to register under composition scheme. Then supply of services other than restaurant services. Only restaurant services can opt for composition scheme. All other services have to register under regular scheme. Then person supplying goods which are not taxable. If you are supplying any goods which are not taxable, then you have to register under regular scheme. Then person making interstate supply. If you are making any supply which is interstate in nature from one state to another, then again you have to opt for regular scheme, not for composition scheme. Then person making supply through e-commerce operator. So any person who is making a supply through e-commerce operator, then he has to supply. Then he has to register under composition. Sorry, he cannot register under composition scheme. So if you are making any supply or if you are an e-commerce operator itself, you cannot opt for composition scheme. Then manufacturer of ice cream and other edible ice. So if you are manufacturer of ice cream and other edible ice, then you cannot opt for composition scheme. Then pan masala, definitely you are not eligible to opt for composition scheme. Then tobacco also, if you are manufacturing or supplying tobacco, you cannot opt for composition scheme. Then conditions for opting composition scheme. So what are the conditions for opting composition scheme? So there are various criteria to be fulfilled to opt composition scheme. So first one is restricted from making supply of goods not liable to GST. So you cannot make a supply of goods which is not liable to GST. So if you are opting for composition scheme, then you have to supply goods which are liable to GST. You cannot supply goods which are not taxable under GST. The next, for example, petroleum. You cannot supply petroleum if you are a composite dealer. Then restricted to make interstate supply or outward supply, including branch transfer. You cannot make interstate supply, outward supply, or even you cannot make branch supply also. Branch transfer also cannot be done if you are a composite dealer. Then restricted to make supply through e-commerce. So if you are a composite dealer, then you cannot make any supply through e-commerce operator. You cannot make, for example, you want to sell goods through Amazon. No, if you are a composite dealer, you cannot make it. Then restriction on manufacture of notified goods. So there are certain notified goods which cannot be supplied by composite dealer. Then all the business need to be registered under the same PAN collectively. You may have 2 or 3 businesses. Under regular scheme, you can have a separate registration, but composite scheme, you cannot have a separate registration. You have to have all the registration with the same PAN number. Then not allowed to collect the tax. You cannot collect the tax from the customers or to whoever you supply the goods. You cannot supply, you cannot charge GST on that, because you are paying the GST on the total turnover or that you have achieved, not on the transaction. Then you will not be able to get the benefit of input tax credit. So if you are purchasing some inputs for making a supply, then you cannot get the credit. You might have paid the tax. For example, you might have purchased some raw material worth rupees 1 lakh and you have paid 10,000 as tax, and raw material you have converted into finished goods, you are selling it. So while selling, you have to pay the tax. Now 10,000 you have already paid the tax for purchases. That cannot be deducted while you are paying the tax to the government. So that is input tax credit. So then 8.1 not applicable for casual and non-resident taxable person. So this composition scheme is 100% not applicable for casual trader and non-resident taxable trader. Then not allowed to supply exempted goods, non-taxable and also exempted goods, interstate supply, all these are not allowed to a composite dealer. Then you have to pay tax at the normal rates that is specified by the government from time to time. It may change. Now it is 1%, next time it may be 1.5%, next time it may be 2%. Then has to mention the sign in the signboard and in the bill of supply in words composition taxable person. So in your signboard in front of your shop, you have to mention that you are a composite taxable person. Then services can be provided only up to 5 lakh, not more than that. If you are providing services more than 5 lakh, then you have to get registered under regular scheme. So that's all from this video. Thank you for watching this video.